Welcome back to the shop, friends. Over the last week or so, I've been busy milling up lumber for the treadle lathe project. And I thought that while I'm doing that, it'd be a good time to actually put together a tutorial on how to mill your own lumber. Today, I'm going to go through the tools that you'll need to do this yourself using only hand tools. So at a bare minimum, you're going to need a plane. I am currently using 3 different planes, and I'll show you the ones that I am using in just a second. You're also going to need a marking knife of some kind. I'm using the Stanley marking knife from Amazon. You'll need some way to measure the lumber to get the correct size, and you can use a tape measure or one of these older style measuring tapes. You also need some form of a square in order to get a nice square edge, and you will need a saw of some sort in order to cut the ends to length and square it off. The Japanese pull saws are actually quite economical and are very sharp, and I really enjoy using them. The 3 planes that I'm using primarily to dimension my lumber is the Stanley Sweetheart number 4, and this is a new plane that can be purchased at multiple places online and in woodworking stores. It is I think of good quality and fairly economical to purchase. I use this primarily for a smoothing plane. The second plane that I use, probably doing the most of the grunt work at least, is the Stanley number 62 low angle jack plane. And this is what I'm doing most of the roughing out with. And this is generally the first plane I use when I start to mill up the lumber to dimension. The third plane that I use fairly often is my Stanley Bailey number 7, and this has a long bed on it, and it prevents the plane from following the humps in the wood, so you can get a very nice straight surface. Certainly it's not necessary to have a joiner plane such as this, but it is very helpful. The next thing you use to mill your own lumber is a way to hold the lumber down when you're planing it. And that's where a proper woodworking bench becomes so invaluable. I'm able to put my dogs in the bench like that, and then I can clamp up the board against the dogs in my vise, and it holds it very still. And this allows me to plane it downward, side to side, without any movement in the board. You can certainly dimension your own lumber without a proper woodworking bench, as I did when I built the Paul Sellers workbench, but it makes it much more difficult. You can certainly use clamps to hold the board while you're planing, but it's much easier having a proper bench and dogs and a vise to hold your lumber still while you're planing it. I think it's much safer as well. The next tools you'll need is marking gauges, and this is one of the 3 that I currently own, and this is a Veritas marking gauge. I also have one that I purchased off Amazon, and this one actually has 2 different pins on one side and one on the other that allows you to mark the wood to dimension it. And then this one I had found at an antique store some years ago, and it's just a homemade version that allows you to move the fence and then have the pin to mark the wood. You'll also need some way to look for twist in the wood, and here I made 2 winding sticks, and those are used, as you probably see me use in the Paul Sellers workbench series, on looking for twist in the lumber, and I'll go through how to do that in the next video. I have been using the Swanson square for some time to look for to get a 90-degree edge on my boards, and this seems to work really well. Then you'll also need something to reference off of as a straight surface, and I've been using my 3-foot level as a reference of a straight edge. That's how I leveled my workbench as well, to assure that I had a straight edge. If you didn't have a level to use, you certainly could use a string line, I suppose, but that would probably be a little bit more difficult. There's not a whole lot of tools you would need to dimension your own lumber. I think I've gone through the main ones you would need today. Primarily, you need a plane, you need a saw, you need some sort of marking gauge and winding sticks, and you need some way to hold your lumber. And I think with those several tools that you could dimension all your lumber by hand with minimum cost. I think if I could only buy one plane, if I only had the money for one plane, I would personally purchase a jack plane. I do the majority of the work with it, and then I come back with the joiner plane to fine-tune the edges of the board, and then I finish it with the smoothing plane, the number 4. But I think that you honestly could do everything you needed with a jack plane if you only had one option. With the exception of my chisel set and mallets, I built the Paul Sellers workbench using pretty much the tools we've gone through today. As you can see, it doesn't take a lot of tools if you work by hand to get a lot of work done. It might be a little bit slower than using power tools, but certainly I think it's more fun. On a side note, we hit 100 subscribers this past week, which is really exciting. And to sort of celebrate the 100 subscriber mark, I kind of wanted to do something fun. So what I want you to do is, everyone who is interested, I would like you to put a comment in the comment section of this video. And then on the next treadle lathe video, I'm going to pull a random person out of the comment section, and I'm going to provide them a free t-shirt. Well, thanks for watching today. That concludes the video on the tools I use to dimension my own lumber. The next video in the series will be how to flatten a piece of wood perfectly flat using only hand tools, so look out for that video. That's all the time we have for today, friends. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.